Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue, episode number 93. And Inter Miami has signed its first player of the offseason. Fafa Picault is joining the Herons. Inter Miami signs the veteran winger, and I think right off the top, spoiler alert, we both love this signing. We'll get into it in more depth over the course of this episode. But before all of that, I want to ask, how are you, my friend, my co-host? How you feeling, Saur?
I'm feeling great. It's almost the new year, and I'm ready to welcome 2025 with open arms. I think 2024 was a great year. It can only get better from here as well. I'm excited, I'm positive, and I'm looking forward to this conversation about Fafa Picault. For the life of me, did not think that this would be something we'd be saying. Fafa Picault joining into Miami. And yet here we are. Very exciting times. I'm looking forward to it. You've already spoiled our thoughts about it. A very exciting signing, but looking forward to an in-depth conversation about him. How are you feeling, Scotty?
I'm feeling good. I appreciate your enthusiasm because I know off screen 2 minutes ago you were very sad and depressed about your team losing in
No.
embarrassing fashion, I might add.
No. Second half was okay, but it is what it is.
Yes. Speaking of Manchester United, by the way, apologies. Fafa Picault, we talked about everything Inter Miami needed at the beginning of the offseason, and we thought there was a good chance Robert Taylor was going to leave. We saw Diego Gomez play as a left winger for much of the second half of the season. Diego Gomez obviously leaves for Brighton. We knew they needed a left winger. Facundo Farias is coming back, but once Matias Rojas was no longer re-signed, we felt they definitely needed another one to complement what they had there. And that's on top of the fact that we think there's a chance Robert Taylor gets moved this offseason. So depth and a signing at left wing was crucial. You couldn't put it all on Facundo Farias. And even if you planned on him being plan A, you needed a plan B that you felt really good about because you would need you were going to need him because Farias was coming off of a major injury, and Inter Miami can't rely on him to be healthy in a season where so much is at stake. So what do? They go out and get a left winger who hasn't been hurt in the last 4 years, who's missed about 5 games in his entire career, and he's now 33, who provides exactly what Inter Miami, at least it felt like they were missing this season, which is pace and energy from that front line. Diego Gomez provided some of that, but he was really a midfielder by nature. Fafa Picault, a true left winger with pace, with athleticism, with relentlessness, with energy that you're going to be able to put at that top line, and he's going to make those runs in behind, and Messi's going to hit him with the pop, and it's going to be great. Okay, I've said a lot. How are you feeling? Because I've already spoiled it for everyone, but how are you feeling about this signing?
I need you to agree with me on a couple of things. First off, we're not going to use the I word, correct? For the rest of the podcast.
Fair.
Second of all, this is not a first team signing. This is a depth piece signing, right? Do you agree with me on that? This is a depth piece signing that we're bringing in to bolster our the team depth. We're going to put him on when we need to in certain games, when situation requires, but I wouldn't necessarily always have him in our best starting 11. Do you agree with me on that?
Yes.
So that being said, I am absolutely stoked with this signing. This was the kind of signing that I was hoping Inter Miami would go for. You've already said athleticism, pace, big, strong, veteran, knows this league inside out. I think often at times Inter Miami has been blamed for being a little bit naive about MLS and what it's about and managing games and understanding how different MLS teams play. We've sometimes suffered breaking teams down. We've not been able to have pace up front to break teams when Diego Gomez is not available. And now we have exactly that. We've got pace, athleticism, and someone who understands how this league works, someone who's played against a lot of the league defenders, and someone who scores goals regularly, assists regularly. He has been a taboo for Inter Miami every single time he's gone up against us. I rewatched that Vancouver game that we played last season once the signing was sort of in the works and once that tweet came out by Tom Bogart. And he was a menace. He didn't score, he didn't assist, but he was still a menace, always running down that left wing, causing us trouble. I remember Jordi Alba had a couple of issues against him. And when you can give someone like Jordi Alba trouble on that left wing side, you're automatically something special, right? You bring something that's the next factor in this team. So very happy with the signing. When you can't beat them, you join them. In this case, we sign them. So very happy with Fafa Picault. I am really excited. And I think this is the kind of signing Inter Miami needed.
Yeah, he wouldn't have gone up against Jordi Alba because he would be on the other side. He would have gone up against Chelo Weekend. But yeah, point taken. This is a player that for the last 2 seasons we have talked about as a guy that's a menace for Inter Miami. For Nashville in 2023, I felt him and Jacob Schaffelberg, the speed that they had on both sides was the advantage that allowed them to sit so deep and still be dangerous going the other way. That made Nashville dangerous in 2023, both in the Leagues Cup final and in the second half of the season. So even once we acquired Messi, him alongside Schaffelberg gave them the verticality they needed to be a danger to Inter Miami. And then when he left at the end of the season, I know they brought in Tyler Boyd. They thought, and I'm speaking of Nashville, they thought they were going to get better and be better in possession and all that type of thing. I think it made their team worse and their season fell apart not long after. He goes to Vancouver. He has a solid season. We see him once. I'll admit I didn't see him a ton because it's the West Coast. I don't watch a ton of West Coast games. But against Miami, he was incredibly dynamic, earned a penalty, and almost scored a really nice header that would have been a dagger for us as Inter Miami fans, but would have been a game saver for Vancouver. Plays about 1,500 minutes, 9 goals, 6 assists. So he doesn't play. It's not like he's a locked-in starter. He's a guy that plays 55% of minutes. I expect him to do the same at Inter Miami next year. You said he's a depth piece. I just want to be clear. Like Robert Taylor got 1,900 minutes last year. I think he's going to get somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 minutes. So I don't see him being a guy that is just playing when everyone's injured or there's a bunch of suspensions or anything like that. I think he's going to play a lot. Is he going to be our top choice in a big game against and the MLS playoffs? Maybe not, but I can definitely see him having a role similar to Matías Rojas this year, similar to Robert Taylor this year, where he's a guy that plays a lot of minutes, comes off the bench a lot.
Comes off the bench. Comes off the bench. I think that's an underrated aspect of just football in general, right? Coming off a bench and being substituted at this age, he's 33, right? So you don't expect him to start every single game. But he, with his athleticism, bring him on in the 60th minute, 50th minute when the opposition legs are tired, and he's going to be an absolute menace. And that's the kind of style I'm looking from him. And also I want to add that you talk about his athleticism, talk about his pace, but one underrated aspect of Fafa Picault is his finishing. He's had some really good finishes and some really well-taken goals last season itself. So I do want to add that. And I realize my audio might be a little bit choppy. My internet connection isn't the best, so I apologize if it's not coming across well. But yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
No, you're fine. Gonna be a fan favorite. I think everyone in Inter Miami is going to get behind this signing because of a few local connections that Picault has, and I just want to go over them quickly. He did spend about half of his childhood in Miami. Obviously a Haitian immigrant, not immigrant, but of Haitian descent, Haitian American. So we lose Schneider Borgelin, we get one back in Fafa Picault. I think at age 9, he moved from New York to Miami and then spent most of the rest of his childhood in South Florida. And then after he goes out and goes to Italy to try and make it as a professional, eventually he makes his way back to South Florida. And this is why a lot of local fans are going to be excited about him. He played for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, which was a NASL team. That's a league in the lower divisions era. It's now no longer a thing. But 2014, he signs with the Fort Lauderdale Strikers and is their best player, or at least their top scorer. He had 12 goals in 24 games. So anyone that was paying attention to that team, paying attention to local soccer at the time, he was certainly a name that you're going to remember. And of course, a lot of those people became the grassroots for the support that now exists at Inter Miami. So he is going to be a guy that the local fans can get behind. By the way, it's my understanding he speaks Spanish, so he should fit into the locker room fine. And he's an MLS veteran that has done it, understands the league, and he provides, I think, the one thing that really, really helps. So it's really hard to criticize this signing in any way because you're not expecting too much from him, but you might get a lot, and it's a very multidimensional signing. So I think it's really hard to criticize this at all.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those signings that I won't say it's super exciting. It's not a marquee signing. It's not a big name that's been linked to Inter Miami for the last 6 months, right? This signing came out of the blue. So for me, I think it's almost more exciting that we weren't expecting something like this. And it came out of the blue, but it's also a signing that seems like it's been well thought out. And he just fits in really well with this team. Some of the issues that we've had up front, some of the gaps that we've had, he fills that. He's a dimensional player that brings in something new to the front line. We've not necessarily seen that, especially losing Diego Gomez. We lost a little bit of physicality up front, and that's what he brings. And yeah, I completely agree with some of the comments here. He is going to play a lot because we have plenty of games this year. So it's very exciting, and I think he's going to really contribute in a lot of ways, both goals and assists. And I think it's a very low risk signing, right? There's not much associated with it. If it doesn't work, it's fine. But if it does work, it's going to be brilliant for this team.
Yeah, we'll get to some of the details in a few minutes, but I will just say, when we were talking about the beginning of the offseason, what we wanted to see from Inter Miami, we were trying to get over the Atlanta loss. I thought a depth winger at left side made a lot of sense to me. I know that there's always going to be the Neymar stuff, the Angel Di Maria stuff, and they might still go out and sign a star left winger. But getting a depth left winger that fit Inter Miami's profile, I thought made a lot of sense. And I did not mention the name Fafa Picault because I thought it was impossible. I thought they would try and get a young player, and I thought he might be too expensive. But that was the archetype of a player that I had in mind, is vertical and relentless. Guy that has the pace, that has a finishing touch, that's a veteran. So he's become a final product, but still has the pace and energy to be an effective counterpart to Messi and Suarez up top. And again, I didn't mention him because I thought it would be impossible, but ultimately it is like, it's an incredible signing. And I saw this yesterday when Tom Bogart mentioned it, and I thought this is incredible. Let me ask you, if you could sign any player in the MLS that's not a DP level salary, is there anyone you would pick over Fafa Picault?
Oh, the name escapes me. There was one defender. His name starts with an M. Oh, I forget. But you know what? That's the kind of signing I would go for.
Are you talking about Moise Bombito for Colorado?
Yes, thank you. There you go.
He now plays in Liga and went for $7 million, so he doesn't qualify.
I wish we could get someone like him because that would be my dream signing for this season. But no, if you think about it, this is the kind of MLS signing that you would go for, right? Maybe the age is a little bit of a question mark, but he's shown that he still has that physicality and that athleticism to actually perform at the high level. So I don't think, especially with this signing with Pico, I don't think that's a concern. And if you put down a list of 5 players that you want from the MLS that could potentially be Inter Miami players in the upcoming season, I would say Fafa Picault would potentially make that list. So very happy with it. I don't think there'd be anyone that comes off the top of my mind that I'd replace, that I'd take over Fafa Picault at this point.
To me, honestly, I think he would be number one. Obviously, if you could add DPs, you'd go for a Cucho Hernandez, someone's a superstar. But
of course,
in terms of like
non-DP players, realistic signings.
Yeah, maybe a Diego Luna, but guys, he's on that short list. Okay, so here are the details. We don't know what his salary is. We don't know what the contract length is. We will find those pieces. We'll find out the contract length when he officially signs with Inter Miami, which should be in the next week or two. But will happen soon and certainly before preseason. The salary we won't learn for a while until the MLSPA releases salary information. But he did make $650,000 last year, which means he wasn't above that magic DP threshold. He'll be below that. He might be on a little bit less. He had a solid season with Vancouver, but he might be on a little bit less to come stay with Inter Miami or to play with the hometown team, the local team. And that means you're getting a player that's not going to cost you any allocation money. He's not going to cost an international roster slot. And you're getting a player that you're very confident can come have a positive impact on your team. I wonder if some of the guys on Inter Miami, Messi, Busquets, watched him play against Vancouver, watched him play against Miami for Nashville, for Vancouver, apologies, and said, this is the type of guy we should go sign. And that was taken into consideration because they're going to know better than anyone, especially Messi and Suarez, who's that third piece that they want to work off of. And so the fact that they went off of Picault, went out and got Picault, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think it's the exact type of fit that we saw was important, that they think is important, and that this team didn't really have last year. And they tried to massage Diego Gomez into it, but he was never really a winger. He was a midfielder. So ultimately a great signing. And I think we've said it all. It's just incredible.
And I do want to add that I think this leaves the room open for other areas of the pitch, other parts of the team being bolstered with more prolific signings. This might be a little bit of an understated signing that goes below the radar because everyone thought that we'd get a marquee signing up front. But I do think there's a possibility that we get another signing in the front three, maybe another left winger, right winger, striker, perhaps. But I think it leaves the room open for a more prolific signing coming in this transfer window in another position, maybe the midfield or defense. So again, it's a very exciting signing. I think it opens the floodgates for what's going to happen over the course of this month before the season starts. And then perhaps before April, we get a few more signings like these. And very excited by the signing, very happy with this. And hopefully it's a sign of what's to come over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, just to wrap up sort of the biography of Picault, he did, after going to the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, he did spend a little bit of time in Europe, played or was under contract with Sparta Prague, may have made a cup appearance, but didn't really break through there. And then FC St. Pauli in Germany in the lower divisions also had a little bit of run there, but couldn't break through. And his real breakout came when he came back to the MLS in 2017 with Philadelphia, spent a couple seasons with the Union, went to Houston, spent a couple seasons with Houston before moving to Nashville in 2023, and then Vancouver in 2024, and now Inter Miami in 2025. I will say, I think it's almost guaranteed this is a one-year contract. He is at that point of his career where he's going to have to prove himself every year, and he's not so good that teams are going to commit to him long-term deep into his 30s. But really, if we get what we wanted, if we get what he gave Vancouver last season, I think we'll be ecstatic, right?
Yeah, 100%. You don't expect too much from him. You don't, expect him to constantly score every single game. But if he does what he did, 9 goals, 5 assists, is actually a really good return. And with what he's supposed to be in terms of the piece that we're bringing him in for, I think that would be a fantastic return from a player like that. And I would be very ecstatic if he scores anything close to 10 goals for us next season, because that in itself would be a big achievement. And it means that he's pitching in quite comfortably.
Okay, let's just imagine, talk hypotheticals, live in an imaginary world where we actually know what's going on for a minute. He is high energy. He's a guy that's going to work hard, relentlessness, things that we attributed to guys like Diego Gomez. That felt like it was one of the big criticisms of Inter Miami this past season and the year before, where they didn't have that sort of relentless energy to surround Messi and Suarez, who aren't going to give you that. Do you think this is something they're going to be keeping a close eye on when they go out and get players this season? Or is it just talent accumulation? Picault fits the right mold and he's a good player and we can get him at a good deal. Do you think that's something they're going to be looking for when they add players this offseason?
It's definitely a sign. I would want this to be a sign for what's to come, because we all know the physical ceiling of this team is a little bit low. And whatever said and done, whatever you say about the MLS, it's a physical league. It takes time to adjust, and you need to be physically athletic, strong, powerful, and certain parts of your team need to be quick, again, strong, and need to be able to compete with the best athletes in the league, right? And that's an area that Inter Miami was kind of suffering on last season. We saw that Messi, Suarez don't necessarily press from the front. Whenever Messi and Suarez were on the bench, our physicality definitely went up. Our athleticism definitely went up. And that's not a knock on playing more athletically or playing more physically. I just think that's the way this team shaped up to be last season. And if I'm the Inter Miami coaching staff, if I'm Javier Mascherano, I'm looking at that and thinking, okay, what's the best way we can actually raise that physical ceiling? And one way to do that is through these new signings. And I hope Fafa Picault is a sign of what's to come in the kind of players that we're looking at. Physically, you bring in players, surround Messi and Suarez with players who can actually do the running for them. And it's actually going to really help us, not just in terms of our goal scoring opportunities and running at the opposition, but also defensively. I'll be very interested to see how he matches up with Jordi Alba on that left wing side, right? We've seen Fafa Picault a couple of times play on the left center side of the pitch, move in a little bit and try and take a shot from outside the box, move in a little bit, play in the box itself, wait for the cutback. It'll be really interesting to see how Jordi Alba and he link up over the next season and what that dimension on the left side looks like. But I would for sure say that bringing in Fafa Picault not only helps us offensively, but also defensively. And that in itself, I think, should be something that the team is looking for. Build that physicality so that we don't suffer defensively as much because of the lack of physical effort from Messi and Suarez.
Just to case in point, there's some conversation in the chat about how many international roster slots Inter Miami has. They, I believe, have 9 or maybe 10 after the Campana trade, and I think they have 9 players that will require one. But those numbers are going to change drastically over the next couple months. They're going to go acquire more, and they are going to sign more players. And that is something we're going to get to in a few minutes. But back to Picault. That dynamic with Jordi Alba and Picault, I think, is really interesting. And I'm glad you brought it up because it's something I wanted to talk about. He likes to overlap, and Picault has the athleticism to not need to be way high up the field in order to have an impact. So I actually think this is going to work really well for those two. And Picault is comfortable coming inside. He's comfortable playing wide. So again, I think he can be that sort of dynamic piece that Inter Miami is looking for. Like, as we're talking about this, I can see him working himself into a starter role for Inter Miami and being first team. I think Facundo Farias is really the competition. Robert Taylor's still on the roster. So, of course, if he's still around, I think he'll be ahead of Picault in the right circumstances. But I think there's a way that Picault has like a huge impact on this team next year. And I really don't think that should go underappreciated.
Yeah, and I think the more we talk about this, the more it comes to light for me. Flexibility is a very underrated aspect of this signing as well. You said he can play centrally. I could almost see him and Suarez linking up together in a 4-4-2 perhaps, or play him off the striker. Doesn't necessarily have to be in a central role, but start him off the striker, maybe in that left pocket, centrally in the pitch. But overall, I think there's so much that you can do with him, right? You just put him on the back of defenders and ask him to run in while Messi is putting in those beautiful balls in for him. And just so much that he brings in terms of different dimensions and different dynamics that this team can utilize from this player. So yeah, I agree with you. There could be a world in which we see him eventually become a starter for us. And depending on what formation Javier Mascherano wants to use, how he wants to link him up with Jordi Alba, how he wants to play with Suarez as well. There's so many different permutations that you can use, and it's very exciting. And the more I think about it, the more excited I actually get.
Yeah, and I also just want to say he's not a striker. So he is not the Campana replacement. He's not coming in to back up Luis Suarez. That's not what he's going to be. He's a left winger who maybe can put a few minutes in centrally, but really what we're talking about is a guy who can play on the left wing and drift into those central channels in order to be creative playmaker. Even though really his biggest asset is his pace and the effort. And you guys will all see that, and I think you'll love him as a player because he's the type of guy that never quits and can be a thorn in your side when you're down 2 goals. He doesn't quit. When you're up 3 goals, he continues to push. So, and that makes him incredibly frustrating to play against. I've said on this podcast, I hate playing against Fafa Picault because he never gives up. He will play a little dirty. He'll really shove you. He'll really put, as he can do, he'll do anything he can. in order to help his team win. And that is
Didn't he
so
get that
frustrating to play
penalty
against.
against us when we played
Yeah.
against Vancouver? He was the one who got that penalty on Jordi Alba, and the ball wasn't even anywhere near him. So expect more of that. I'm just glad he's going to be doing that for our team and not against us.
Yes, and so it's the type of player that even if he's on your bench, you'd rather him be on your bench than on the opposition field for whoever you're playing against, because he's an incredibly frustrating player to watch your team go up against. But I expect him to be an incredibly lovable player when he's on your team. That's my expectation. Okay, who does this affect? Let's talk about that.
Robert Taylor.
Well, let's start a little lower where we can have an easier conversation. Leo Alfonso is the first guy that came to mind because I thought there was a chance he could step up and be the left winger that a smaller role, but just provides pace and dynamism when you need it. And that's now going to be Fafa Picault. So I think maybe more than anyone else, this affects the potential role of Leo Alfonso on Inter Miami's team next year. And then we could talk about Robert Taylor.
Yeah, but I think with Leo Alfonso, there's also a conversation to be had about how many minutes you're going to give him, right? I do still think he's going to have a very similar role to what he had last season until he proves that he can actually go on and make a difference in the last 30 minutes, in the last 35 minutes of the game. So I still think he's going to be another depth piece option. Fafa Picault is obviously going to be the preferred off-the-bench option. I would always expect him to come on before Leo Alfonso, but I think Alfonso's role is going to be very similar to last season. I don't expect it to increase unless he has an absolute burst through the ceiling season where it's a breakthrough for him, where he definitely makes a difference every time he comes off the bench. So I don't know if it's going to affect him a lot. It just gives him a little bit more competition, and he needs to utilize the minutes that he gets more effectively to be able to get more minutes off the bench. But yeah, definitely someone to keep an eye out for and see how Javier Mascherano utilizes him, because earlier, if we didn't have any other option on the bench, Leo Alfonso would be the one that we would go to. But now, whether it's starting Fafa Picault or off the bench, he's definitely going to cut into some minutes that Leo Alfonso might have been promised.
Yeah, well, he's not been promised anything, but
yeah, exactly.
I think that with a new coaching staff, you have to re-earn everything. And if you're a guy that doesn't have a lot of cap charge assigned to you and you don't have a huge reputation, you may have to re-earn that all over again. And so I am worried a little bit about guys like Yannick Bright and Leo Alfonso having to start from scratch and earn their way back into the team, even though especially a guy like Yannick Bright just deserves to be there. Okay, let's get back to left winger. Is Inter Miami done at the wing spots? Because if you look right now, it is very full. They have Leo Messi at right wing. They have Julian Gressel who can play there. They have Robert Taylor on the left wing. They have Fafa Picault now on the left wing. And they have Facundo Farias who can play on both sides. And then you even have Leo Alfonso, who is a sort of lower down option that can give you minutes. That's 6 guys for 2 spots. That's a very full roster. And if this is how they were going to start the season, I think we'd be very comfortable with what they are. And I'm going to let you respond to that.
No, sorry. I was waiting for you to finish. For me, I don't think, I completely agree with you. If we go into the next season with this as our starting front line, I don't think that's an issue. And I've always said this. I've always maintained this.
But
yeah, scoring goals has never been an issue for Inter Miami, right? The wings have never been like an outright issue. Leo Messi alone could be our wing player, our main wing player, and then put some kids on the left wing side, and I think we'd still potentially get some sort of results out of them. Now, there's obviously the little tactics that you have to talk about stretching the pitch and all of that. And I think we're good enough right now in the wing spots, but we do want to get better. So what I expect to happen over the next couple of weeks, over the next month, is players like Robert Taylor, Julian Gressel being moved on and then being replaced by better quality players in those positions. So yes, if we go into the season, if this is our wing business done for this transfer window, we'd be fine with that. And there's a case to be made that potentially that might be the case, because we might be saving our main marquee signings in the wings for the summer transfer window. So maybe that is, that's it. And that's fine. But I do think that we're going to see at least one more outgoing, whether it's Robert Taylor, Julian Gressel, or both. and then the replacements coming in for them. So I've never seen the wing spots as too much of an issue for Inter Miami, but there is going to be an upgrade eventually, whether it's this transfer window or whether it's in the summer transfer window.
Okay, so now let's talk hypotheticals. You mentioned Julian Gressel. You mentioned Robert Taylor as guys that could leave the club via trade. Both would likely stay in the MLS. Another player, though, that we haven't mentioned this rumor yet on the chat on this podcast. So I apologize if this ends up being absolute nonsense. But there was a Boca Juniors Facundo Farias connection. I don't know if that's a real possibility. I kind of doubt it, but I say that to say that it feels like there's still a lot of movement at this position on both sides. Julian Gressel, Robert Taylor feel a lot more likely. And if they do go, that means Inter Miami needs to bring in another winger. We've heard a couple names. I'm loath to mention names that don't have sort of solid rumors unless it's just a few fun minutes at the end. But it feels like we're not done adding wingers to this roster. Do you get that vibe, or you think there's a chance this could be it?
Yeah, I do get that vibe. I do think, given the rumors that have been circulating, and again, not to feed into those, it just seems like there's going to be one more upgrade here and there, a couple of tinkerings happening. But honestly, I'm fine. I'm fine if something happens. I'm fine if nothing happens as well. We're forgetting that Facundo Farias is coming back. Hopefully, he is at the same level that we saw him last time he was on the pitch, and we haven't lost that much depth. I would rather focus on the strike position than the wing spots. I think there's enough cover for Messi if he's off for international duty. We have Julian Gressel, we've got Facundo Farias there, who can play right wing. We've got enough cover on the left wing spot. Fafa Picault coming in, Robert Taylor being there, Leo Afonso, and Facu Farias. So I think there's enough cover. If nothing happens, I'm going to be happy with that. But I do think something's going to happen. I do think there's going to be one more movement. At this point, if you ask me to bet money, I think Julian Gressel is going to be moved on and someone else is going to be brought in that right wing spot. I expect both of them to go. And I don't think Rojas is coming back. So, yeah, I think there's two more signings happening in that spot. There's a lot of signings going to be happening this season, aren't there?
Yeah, and listen, we talked about this last episode, right? Last Thursday, we were on this.
Nine signings, yeah.
We talked about 9 signings. I think we might still be at 9 signings because we only had one winger added, and Fafa Picault is not the top-end winger we thought might come in, right? And I still think there's room for Neymar or Di Maria, or, whatever big name you want to put out there. And even if it's not, maybe a U22 DP type signing. So for me, I feel like this only tells us that we're getting another winger. It's more likely we get another winger because this feels like a backup replacement, a guy who's going to give you quality, solid minutes, be injury free, help you out, but isn't going to be the guy that they want. Maybe they feel that Facundo Farias is that guy. I feel like that's a lot to put on him coming off of an ACL injury, and that if he becomes that, it's just a bonus. We haven't talked about striker yet. 2 midfielders we talked about, 2 center backs, 2 goalkeepers, maybe a right back. So we're still talking about 9 players even after this signing, and I don't think it's unlikely at all, really. And then maybe a right back. It just feels like there's a lot of work to do, and Inter Miami's only getting started. I did say last episode on Thursday that I thought by this upcoming Friday, so 4 days from now, we would have our first name. It only took 2 days. So now I'm going to say it again. We're going to have another player by this Friday, and hopefully we get another one even sooner. But it just means they have a lot of work to do, and they got to get moving, right? And they've started now.
Do you expect our next 5 episodes to just be player episodes? Because it almost feels like that point of the season or that point of the transfer window where
I think all of I think our next 5 episodes are going to be 2-player episodes.
You know what? If that happens, I'll be very, very happy because I want to get stuck into the transfer window business. It's been a while. Inter Miami has been slow in getting their business started. I'm seeing New England Revolution making all these signings, other teams making all these signings or announcing some sort of movements. And here we are sitting with our butts on our hands. And I expect the floodgates to now open, as I've said already.
Yeah. I think I have to, maybe you less than me, but I have to give a little bit of credit to Mascherano and Raul Sanyehi, because I was
100%.
questioning their sort of approach and whether they had what it took. And I really love this first signing. So we haven't seen the details yet, but I want to say I have more faith in them now than I did 48 hours ago before we heard this, because I think this is a tremendous player. I think he's exactly what Inter Miami needs. And I'm sort of shocked that they went out and got him. This isn't a player we would have gotten with Tata Martino a year ago. And I love that we did.
But very simply, this was in nobody's bingo cards. This was on nobody's, like, none of us expected this to happen. And that in itself is very exciting because it shows that Rahul Sanyehi, Javier Mascherano, whoever made this decision, whether it was the scouts, whether it was the coaching department, whether it was the executives, they've realized that this team needs a little bit more veteran MLS blood in it, right? This is not an Argentinian signing. This is not a South American signing. This is an MLS signing, recognizing that this team needs a little bit of that MLS blood. And for me, that in itself shows a recognition of, yes, this team had gaps last season that we need to fill. And the fact that they're recognizing that, they're trying to correct that and add a dimension to this team that doesn't already exist is very exciting, right? They're trying to bring in something new, and none of us expected it, as you said. And I think this is a sign to come that we are going to see signings that are going to be slightly different, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in the mode of that South American Argentinian player that the coach or the players are familiar with. This might actually be a more pervasive, wholesome, comprehensive transfer window where we'll see different sort of signings come in, whether it's an MLS veteran or a youngster coming in from Argentina or South America. So very excited to see how this shapes up, but a very good sign. And as you said, hats off to Javier Mascherano and Raul Sanyehi for actually pulling the trigger on this, because nobody expected this to happen. And it's a very exciting player they'd brought in.
Yeah, I will say before, to caveat that, a year ago with Tata Martino, he brought in Julian Gressel, and that was the MLS veteran that we got. And then almost everyone else followed that same pattern that we kind of expected the offseason to follow. And every other name we've heard connected to Inter Miami follows the same exact pattern we were expecting. It is a young player in Argentina. It is a guy that or has Argentinian roots that kind of fits the mold of what we expected from Mascherano and the way Inter Miami's running things now. But let's talk about what's next. I think you can put a hold on the forward position, the wide forward position for now. There's no desperate need for one. Until you move a Julian Gressel or a Robert Taylor, you're set. I think that's true. You need to get a striker. And I think that's got to be one of the next two things you do. Get a striker and a center back, because those are the needs. Everything else, I think you can start the season with what you have now. Maybe you need a backup goalkeeper, obviously, but and you can sort of solve in the first couple of weeks of the season. Not that we would like to do that, but I think really at the start of preseason, you want at least another striker and at least another center back that are of quality, especially the center back. Or do you disagree? Do you think we need something else?
No, we talked about how important it is to get the players in at the right time, give them time to settle in, adjust to the new coaching staff, get used to MLS. So the earlier we do the business, the better it is for us. But again, let's be realistic here. Some things happen. You may have plans that fall apart. Business is business. It takes time, right? So if you think about the immediate positions, I 100% agree with you. The next couple of positions that need to be filled are, that's fine. That spine needs to be bolstered. Strike, backup, goalkeeper, backup, and then maybe two center backs. So for me, those four positions are the next positions that we need to look at and bring in. Knowing how things work, I have a feeling that we may get a movement here or there, maybe even a central midfielder coming in or a forward coming in. But yeah, I completely agree with you. We can go into the season with our forward line being what it is right now, but we need upgrades on defense. And I think goalkeeper backup is very important in the strike position. So I'm hoping the next couple of signings that we get are in those positions, bolster the spine, strengthen that area, and then we can kind of think about upgrading the rest of the roster as and how the season starts. So as much as we want all the 9 signings to
Yeah.
come in over the next week or two, it's not going to happen, right?
And listen, I'm not suggesting that they shouldn't try and get all of these
Oh
guys
no, yeah,
solidified. But it feels like desperation time means you need a center back, you need a striker, maybe even a second center back, but you want that set for that February 18th game and not getting them 3 days
exactly.
before and throwing them in, but giving them a real preseason so they can get accustomed to this team. Neither here nor there. Christian Medina, a midfielder from Boca Juniors that Inter Miami really wanted last year, has completely fallen out with the club, went on loan to Turkey, and I think he just left for free maybe. And he's gone off the board, but I think Boca Juniors wish they had sold him to Inter Miami last
That was
summer.
midfielder or a central?
Yeah, he's a number 8.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the most recent rumor, which has come up over the last 24 hours and felt very real. And that is Gonzalo Lujan from San Lorenzo in Argentina. He's a 23-year-old center back, right-sided center back. Went to the Olympics as an alternate with Argentina, so he has close familiarity with Javier Mascherano. Was sort of in that same category as Federico Redondo. I know we don't know much about him. Listen, we're not avid followers of the Argentine, professional league, but right-sided center back feels like it's something that they're really going after right now.
Yeah, again, young, athletic, I guess. Argentinian, fits all the boxes. Center back, we need that position strengthened. Looks like an exciting signing. Would love to read into him more and understand what his strengths and weaknesses are, but definitely seems like the right center back position is a priority for this club. One thing I worry is that they may be looking at youngsters, and that gives me an idea that perhaps Aviles and David Martinez are considered the first choice, with the new incoming center backs being backup options who'd have to fight for their place. I would prefer, whether it's the right center back or the left center back, I would say left center back primarily. I hope that's a more veteran signing because we do need a more commanding player in that position. So we'll see how they plan out this incoming signing, but promising.
Yeah, he's a right-sided player, and as Russell says in the chat, I think he has a little bit of right back in him. So he's primarily a center back, but he can cover for a right back. So that also could solve 2 sort of holes with one player. And that's something that we talked about last summer as a player that as like the profile we'd really like to bring in, a center back who can cover at right back if needed. And this guy could be that player. So that would be exciting if we could get him. The rumor is he is potentially coming on loan for the year, and then there'd be a buy option after. I will just say the reason Inter Miami does that is because they can bring more players, more quality players in on loan and not have to worry about the transfer fee, not have to worry as much about what it looks like from a cap perspective, from how they manage their roster. And it really works favorably. And we saw last year they brought in Nico Frede, didn't sign him. Talking about David Martinez, another guy they brought on loan with a buy option, might not sign him next summer. So this is what you're going to see a lot of from Inter Miami. I've seen people mention the chat. People are starting to figure out what the game is. You bring him in on loan, and you don't have to worry about the transfer fee being a part of how you operate from a financial perspective. And so that's a huge advantage. But it also means that a lot of these guys aren't going to get signed permanently. They are sort of mercenaries who are going to come, get an opportunity to play with Messi. Maybe they get signed long-term, but very few of them are going to get signed long-term. This is what Inter Miami fans have to get used to.
And also, in a way, this is very good for us because you bring in young players on loan, they have to show their worth, right? They will be hungry to show exactly what they can do. And if they perform well, then they have a future at this club. And it gives us an opportunity to then sign them on a more permanent basis. Being on loan can be a little bit of a up and down depending on how the player reacts to it. But I do think it's a great way to test out what a player is made of and how they fit this club. And you don't necessarily have to go all in. You can see what they bring to this team, how they contribute, and if they do well, then there's all the reason to keep them on. So I like that. I think this is going to be an exciting signing if it comes through, if it's on loan. And these are the kind of signings, as you said, we need to get used to, but also I think works well for the club in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you fall in love with a player, get his jersey before the season ends because you might not have a chance the
Robert
next
Taylor.
year. Yeah. A couple other guys from San Lorenzo that apparently were in talks with. Ivan Leguizamon is a guy that Inter Miami was originally looking at a year and a half ago. In the summer, they brought in Farias and Gomez and Totavilas as a potential U22 player. Obviously, they got guys they preferred, but he's a guy that Inter Miami has been looking at for quite a while. He's more of a winger, a right winger, but and then another one, Alexis Cuello, who's a striker. I just want to mention those three because they are names that we've seen lately. The striker that seems closest, though, and again, I really do hate feeding into these rumors, but it's the offseason, and this is
It's
really
all we
fun.
can do. It's exciting times. That's all the fun we can have.
I hate it because I have so much fun doing it, but I know
I heard
that
Harry
a
Kane's
lot of
coming to MLS.
Yeah. Tadeo Allende, who plays for Celta Vigo in Spain, but played for Godoy Cruz prior to that, just moved, seems like really found his way at Celta Vigo in La Liga, but he's a player that was promising enough in Argentina. He's 25. He's a striker. He's a guy that Inter Miami could bring in and would feel like a like-for-like replacement for Leo Campana, a guy that we felt had a big future. And again, if this is a player that can come in and be a stud, not just in 2025, but be the eventual long-term replacement for Luis Suarez, I would love it.
I think this could even be, on paper, a potential upgrade to Leo Campana. This, if happens, could be one of my favorite signings this transfer window. Exactly what we're looking for, right? We spoke about the worst possible scenario for this strike position incoming would be if we bring in an old player who's slightly, on the swan song of his career and doesn't necessarily add much compared to Suarez. Our ideal signing would be a young 23, 24, 25-year-old athletic, hungry player who can challenge Suarez from time to time and give him a run for his money in that starting 11 position. And this seems like it has all the potential to be one of the best signings of this transfer window. I would absolutely love it if that happens. Absolutely love it.
I'm hesitant to say I'd love it because I have seen so many players come into this league and not succeed. But
on paper, it makes sense, right? On paper, this is exactly what you're looking for.
Right. From a profile perspective, I will say I've seen some talk about him as Zaragoza is a team that was looking to sign him, obviously in the La Liga 2 in the second division, but that is where Raul Sanyehi came from before he arrived in Inter Miami this summer. So this could be a player that he's been watching for a long time and feels has a really good chance to have a positive impact here. He's a little bit older than Campana. I felt very strongly that Campana was a really good player. So I guess my standard for him to be that good is pretty high, but it would be pretty cool to bring in a replacement that both the club and the coach feel great about. And, be exciting to get to see what he's all about.
All he has to do is score a couple of last-minute goals against DC United, and I think he'll earn his worth, right? Then we can start comparing him to Leo Campana, and not just score a couple of goals, score a couple of bangers, because that's the standard that Campana set.
In all of the Campana conversations we had, I'd never mentioned the Orlando City goal in 2022, where he opens the game 35 seconds in with a sort of bloop from near midfield on a mistake from Orlando City that got us started on that playoff clinching win. So many good memories there. Won't rehash that, but this is the profile I'd like to see.
And
Tadeo Allende.
Can I just clarify before we move on from this? I think more than the player, I'm excited about the profile. This is the kind of profile that we need to go for. So yes, maybe there are certain gaps in the player that we're looking at, and he may not be the ideal replacement to Campana, but overall, on paper, the kind of replacement that we need is a young striker who can complement Luis Suarez, can potentially cover for him when needed, and can even compete for that starting 11 position. I think there's a lot to like about that profile. So that's what I think we're looking for, and we need to go for. Not someone who's old and who's just coming in to be a backup when Suarez is not available. that's the kind of signing that I'd be least excited about.
Yeah, Wookie has a good chat, and I think it's worth a conversation. Why so excited about a player who doesn't qualify or doesn't play a ton for Celta Vigo, hoping they would aim higher? I think the thing is, we know whoever they bring in is not going to be a DP, and they're not going to be a starter. And so to find a sort of player that hasn't entered their prime yet, but that has real starter level potential in the MLS and is in that 23, 25 range, who's not 19, not just figuring out how to be a professional, but is there and has sort of is ready to blossom. I think that's what we're talking about when we talk about that profile, because we know you can't go sign a Cucho Hernandez or a player like that who's, on the periphery of a Premier League team or of a good player in a championship team, something like that. That's not going to happen in Miami's current situation.
Would you be okay with a Fafa Picault-esque signing in that strike position as a backup, someone who's like 33, 34, MLS veteran who's proven that he can score a few goals, but is coming in essentially as a, backup to Luis Suarez only when Suarez is unavailable or needs a bit of a rest? Would you be okay with that?
No, I would be disappointed in that. I mean, listen, if the rest of the roster shakes out, so you have to do that, okay, fine. But a guy like Kai Kamara feels like what you've been saying. He's an MLS journeyman. He's played for a ton of teams, has a ton of career goals. He's older than 33. He's more like 43, but is still around. Played for LAFC last year and was a contributor for them. So I wouldn't like to see that. Maybe as a third choice, but I just don't think that fits what Inter Miami wants to do. So, yeah. And by the way, Allende would be also a loan player with potentially an option to buy. So he may end up being a DP or he may be a 1-year type thing. But for him to move to a league or a club where he's going to play a lot, I think would be beneficial for him and good for Inter Miami if he's a stud.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we do it? Should we talk about the bingo card?
I don't want to because I know what's coming and I think you're pulling ahead, which I don't like. But why don't we update our audience about where we are?
Is this the first time we've updated it live on the show?
No, this is the second time or the third time, but both times I was ahead, so I was happy with that. And it feels like now you have more chances of getting a bingo, and I don't like that.
So here's the thing. You are one center back away from getting 5 in a row. And I know some people don't consider that bingo, but on this show, it's going to count 5 in a row because you got Franco Negri, you got Christoph right, you got Diego Gomez right, and you got Chris Henderson right. You only need to sign a center back for you to win. And that's a good spot to be in. Your problem is I only need us to sign a center back for me to win. So your best chance, your closest chance to winning bingo is only going to equal a draw. But if you look at mine, I actually have a faster way to get to bingo. And that's if your calendar gets traded. I think right now you're looking at either a loss or a draw. How does that make you feel?
Not good. Not good at all. I thought I had it in the bag last time around we saw this, and then Inter Miami went and signed Fafa Picault and ruined it for me. As much as I love that signing and it's going to be great for us, I hate the fact that it's pulled me back on bingo. But you know what? Never give up. I've seen teams come back from worse, and I'm hoping that we don't sign a center back first. We do something that helps me complete another line, as unlikely as that is. Hope is what kills, right? But hope is all I have. So we'll see. And I don't mind drawing with you. It's fine, but it's not as good as,
Hey, listen,
it's not as good as,
there's a Julian Gressel trade in there maybe, and there's a Miami transfer record. So you have pathways, but
listen,
I like where I'm
all we need to do is, the thing is, the next best possible bingo that I can get is that diagonal from upper left to right down. And even that requires Inter Miami signing a second center back. So I don't think we're going to sign a second center back before we sign a first center back. So I'm basically screwed. I'm going to give up, guys. I think I'm done. I'm done.
Well, there's no quitting until you lose officially, because it wouldn't be fun for me to rub it in if. But also,
So
I mean,
how
a
bad
draw
would it
wouldn't be
be if
that
we just
satisfying.
draw? That's
That
going.
would be that
If it would
satisfying.
feel like we've rigged this, but we haven't really, guys. You should go out and watch our bingo episode, because we did this live on stream. So there's no way we could have rigged this.
See, I think we messed up by making us pick the same 25. I think if we picked slightly different 25s,
yeah.
because I would have picked Tata Martino to leave, maybe, and
Dude,
then I
I
would have
didn't
been
even
way
know
ahead of
what it
you.
was before we did this. So, or how we played
That's
bingo.
true.
before we did this.
That's
So
true.
I blame you. I blame you.
Okay. I feel like there's one other thing. So I'm gonna let you talk about Fafa Picault for a minute while I figure out what that is.
Okay, filibustering is never my strong suit, but I'm going to try my best. Fafa Picault, very exciting. I'm looking forward for him joining into Miami as soon as possible. I hope he doesn't get announced before they announce the center back, because that would actually help my bingo chances. So all of this is going to depend on when the signings do get announced. Nothing is confirmed till it's actually put out into the world and into Miami actually posts something. So we'll see what happens. But I'm very excited for this signing. I think he's going to be great for us. I'm going to make an early bet. As long-term listeners of the Drive Ping Dialogue know, I love to make early bets, and I love to make outrageous bets. I think Fafa Picault is going to get close to 20 goal contributions for Inter Miami next season. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm
No,
going there.
that's a hot take. We should do an episode just on
This is
season
what
hot takes
happens
from
when
your
you
save.
give me the mic, right? This is what happens when you give me a minute to talk about a player. I will go out and make outrageous claims. And I think that needs to be one of our episodes, outrageous claims for the upcoming season. And I'm going to go in early and make that one of mine.
We can record that and then not broadcast it ever, because we'll only look like fools. But transfer window. This episode and last episode were very much focused on what this team needs. I don't think much of the conversation has changed by adding Fafa Picault. I still think there's a very real chance they sign another forward, because I think we're going to get outgoings. I think they're going to get 2 goalkeepers. I think we're going to get at least 1 midfielder, probably 2. I think there's 2 center backs incoming, potentially a right back. Although if you can get a center back that can do both, maybe not. And then you need a number 2 striker. So there's a lot of work to do. The team has been going, has started to go now with the Fafa Picault signing, but they have a lot of work still to get done. What are your thoughts on the transfer window? You excited? You think we're going to get a lot done in the next week and a half?
This one's really excited me, because I didn't expect this to be our first signing. Really sets the mood. I think it really sets the tone for how we're going to proceed in this transfer window. I hope it's not like last time where we signed 1 MLS quality player and then the rest was very much sticking to the script. So I'd like a few more surprises here and there, but we're always excited for new players, right? We've talked about this in the last couple of episodes. This Inter Miami team could look very different come that first kickoff on February 18th. So it's high time that we start announcing some players. I know Inter Miami has a tendency to delay a lot of these announcements, but over the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a lot more rumors, a lot more announcements, and a lot more links. And we're going to be there to dissect every single one of them. So very much excited for that. I think this is the best part of the preseason.
Yeah, guys, the last 2 episodes, very transfer heavy. Our next one might be 2. If we get a big signing, we might just go live right then and there. But we also have some other things Inter Miami related. We want to do a draft style episode, or draft talking about the super draft in more depth. I think we have some cool things lined up there, and just some other cool stuff. So stay tuned to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you for being a part of this. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. See you next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this, and have a wonderful day.